Good evening. Thank all of you for being here. Welcome to my studio class. We're going to be talking about articulation this evening, which is one of my favorite things to cover. I was so excited to discover that it's easier to sing if you focus on the actions that you're engaging in rather than the sounds that you're trying to make. Because if you're really focusing on trying to make a particular sound, then your attention is going to be divided, and you're going to be assessing what you're doing while you're also doing it. Whereas if you're really just thinking about what it is that you want to communicate, and you've got a technique that enables you to just not think about your technique, but just unleash your expressiveness and emotions and the story that you're telling, then things are a lot more fun and usually a lot more efficient. So I've come to think of singing in terms of movement. And so tonight we're going to be talking about the movements that are part of what we call articulation. What happens when you move your jaw, your lips, your tongue, your soft palate. So when I think about movements, my approach is informed by my experiences as a fitness trainer. So if you can all join me in thinking a little bit more like a fitness trainer or like an athlete, then that's going to provide some useful context for the things that we're going to be talking about. A fitness trainer conditions movement by optimizing the anatomy, right? You're going to optimize your anatomy so that it is able to move more efficiently, so that you've got full range of motion for all of your joints, so that you've got optimal muscle length tension relationships. Some muscles tend to be overactive, like our upper trapezius. Some muscles tend to be underactive, like our shoulder stabilizing muscles. And when it comes to the muscles that control the articulators, the same thing is true. You want to optimize the anatomy, and then you want to optimize coordination. You want to optimize your coordination so that it responds to your intention. You don't want to have to think, where is my jaw, when you're in the middle of a phrase. You just want to habituate jaw movement, tongue movement, so that it responds when you think, I'm going to communicate this very intense thing, and in order to do so, I need the perfect ah vowel, and then everything just kind of like slots into the perfect place, and you have your ah vowel because you have optimized your coordination. And to that end also, we need to improve the mind-body relationship so that we're able to observe what we're doing while we're doing it, and then assess things afterwards, rather than being distracted by, oh, I'm feeling this, I'm noticing that, in real time. It's going to take you out of the moment so that you can't really be thinking about the thing that you're trying to express. So just quickly to go through some anatomy terms. Joint movements. Everybody extend your arm. Flexion. Extension, right? These are just terms that we're going to be using throughout the class. So flexion is when you decrease the angle. Extension is when you increase the angle of a joint. Rotation, right? When you turn something. Adduction, adduction is when you bring something together. Abduction is when you take it apart. And that should probably suffice for the vocabulary that we do for this evening. I'm also going to be asking you to think about just the tendencies of certain muscles. Because we use our articulators, because we use the muscles that are involved in singing for many other things, some muscles tend to be a little bit overactive. Some muscles tend to be underactive when we're thinking about what we need to do for singing. For example, everybody, can you swallow? Swallowing is very important. It's very important for our survival. The muscles that contribute to swallowing tend to be very, very strong. This is one of the reasons why our tongues don't necessarily do everything we want them to do for articulation, because muscles like the hyoglossus, the muscle that retracts and depresses the tongue, is very efficient for other things that we need to use our tongue for, but then we need to decide that maybe I don't want to retract or depress my tongue when I'm singing because I need to be in a high arched position for the vowel that I want to articulate. So we have some of these muscles tend to be overactive and tight, some of these muscles tend to be underactive, and we need to sort of wake them up and engage them. And then there are the muscles that tend to be chronically contracted. If you're used to sort of like holding yourself in a certain position, then those muscles are going to sort of be like, oh, okay, I'm just going to stay here because you need me to be stable in this position. So when we see people, looking at their devices all the time, the muscles that are going to like hold your head in this position are going to tend to be a little bit chronically tight. And the same is true for muscles of articulation. So if they're chronically tight, then you don't really have full control over it. You're going to have to find a way to release that chronic tightness so that you can use that muscle so that it's available for movement. Where the articulators are concerned, the jaw muscles tend to be overactive, right? Our jaws evolved to be able to crunch up raw meat and vegetables. We don't need it to be able to do that anymore. To be able to articulate a beautiful vowel or come in and articulate a nice dental consonant. The amount of strength that you need to engage your jaw in order to do that is not on the level of what the jaw is capable of, so we need to usually get the jaw to calm down a little bit. Where the tongue is concerned, everybody stick out your tongue, and now relax. The muscle that sticks out your tongue is the genioglossus. We usually are pretty good at sticking out our tongues, but then the hyoglossus, the muscle that retracts and depresses the tongue, tends to be overactive, so we need to look at that. Lips, we tend to underutilize our lips. Let's just do a little bit of a lip warm up. Everybody go, ow, 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 ah. Ow, 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 ah. You're all capable of engaging your lips very, very efficiently, but it's likely that you are not engaging them as intentionally, as efficiently when you articulate things like oh and ooh for your singing. And then there is the soft palate. The soft palate, lots of misconceptions abound about the soft palate. We'll probably be talking about that. The soft palate regulates nasality. That's pretty much all it does for us as singers. We also associate the lifting of the soft palate with the kind of height and space that we want, usually for bloom and resonance in classical singing, or for the kind of height that we tend to feel when we've got a nice resonant high note that we're producing. But sometimes it can be very difficult to know what your soft palate is doing. It can be a little bit tricky to work with, but it's very important for articulation and resonance. So the only other thing that I want to say by way of introduction is that vowels are not that mysterious. I'm learning more about vocal acoustics and want to continue to deepen my awareness of this, but the basic thing that we need to know is that the way we perceive vowels has to do with two basic things. Where is the hump of the tongue inside your mouth, right? And how big is the opening? How big is the aperture? And you can change the size of the aperture by closing your jaw and opening your jaw, but often the way that we need to articulate these sounds for singing, it's much more efficient to let the resonance space on the inside stay open and use your lips to regulate the size of the aperture. So you ask, well, if all I need to do is decide like where should the hump of my tongue be and where should my lips be, then why am I having so much trouble with my vowel or my e vowel or my ah? Ah should be like so easy, right? And where these things become problematic is when we don't have full access to the range of motion for these muscles and joints that move our articulators around. And that's what was so interesting to me from a fitness training perspective, because a fitness trainer, a sports scientist, knows that if a muscle is tight, you can release and stretch it. If a muscle is weak, you can strengthen it. These are all things that can be addressed. But the muscles, the little muscles that operate our articulators, many of them we can't see or feel directly, and so we don't necessarily know what they're doing. And so being able to figure out like where is something a little bit tight needs to be lengthened and released, where is something a little bit underactive and needs to be strengthened, that's what I want you all to be thinking about and paying attention to as we talk about articulation this evening. Because while it might not be something that you could really quickly do, if you've got a tight hamstring that's limiting range of motion through your hip, you can stretch your hamstring. It's not going to change overnight. Those of you, I've got some yoga aficionados in here. But it is something that with time and stretching, you can lengthen that hamstring, and then you'll be able to move your hip more efficiently. And the same is true for all of these little muscles that operate our articulators. So if you're having a problem with a vowel, trying to figure out like, well, where are things a little bit out of balance so that I'm not able to move my tongue into the position that I want to on a given pitch, or I can't really adjust the shape of my aperture the way that I want to, rather than thinking that it's this mysterious thing that your body just isn't designed to do well. If you can really get into the anatomy and the movements of it and figure out, where do things need to be just sort of evened out, then you're going to find that that vowel is a lot more accessible than you might have thought. Okay, so we've got a selection of singers and pieces in a variety of languages, so we can look at the nuances of each language and the challenges that each presents for singing. And the soprano who was going to sing something in Italian for us this evening was not able to join us. We'll get to hear her at a future point, but Beverly has consented to sing a little bit of one of her Italian arias so that we can talk about the Italian language. Voice teachers love to use Italian to teach singing because there are so few vowels and because the consonants tend to not be that complicated. Most consonants in Italian you can articulate with your jaw in a relaxed position. So Italian being the best case scenario. Let's start there.
Do you mind if I use this stand?
Oh, sure.
Just in case. I know a lot of words. I'm just not.
No, you can tell us how to sing. I really
sure
appreciate it.
that I know where to go.
Thank you for your assistance
All right,
this
and
evening.
you're good. Do you want to score it?
Oh, sure. Thank you.
All right, I'll give you this one.
Okay. So tell us who you are and what you're going to sing.
My name is Beverly Love, and this is Norma, Costa Diva from Norma by Bellini.
And where are you going to sing to?
Just to Saint-Zavel, I think, from the beginning to here.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're not going that far, just from
here.
Exactly.
And then I'll just start here and all that.
Perfect. Yeah, I just 2 measures is probably fine.
Are still rather challenging to articulate for those of us who were born here and grew up speaking English, because we have all of these speech habits, right? The way that we learn how to articulate an E vowel is not necessarily going to be optimal for resonating your singing voice. The way that we learn to do things like diphthongs and glides, we kind of just sort of mush them from one sound to another, whereas if you're going to be singing, whatever language you're singing in, you have to be intentional about defining each of these vowel sounds. And so there's plenty to work with here. Now, I happen to know that Beverly has done a lot of work on freeing up her tongue.
That was not so obvious.
And no, it's good, but you may have noticed that your jaw was shaking a little bit in tandem with your vibrato. When you see the jaw shaking in tandem with the vibrato, people think, oh, that must be jaw tension, but in fact, it usually indicates that there's some tongue tension going on.
Yeah.
Because the tongue is attached to the hyoid bone from which the larynx is suspended, And so if your tongue is sort of retracting and pressing down a little bit on the hyoid bone, then we need to use a little bit of extra breath pressure to get the voice to go, and then the tongue shakes, and then the jaw shakes along with it. So I would like to, with your help, demonstrate a protocol for releasing tongue tension. And the way that, is it okay? Was that the other things we talked about? All right, so just to go over quickly, if you are somebody's fitness trainer or their voice teacher and you need to fitness train their tongue, one really useful protocol for retraining muscle length tension relationships we refer to as corrective exercise. It's a 4-step process. The first thing that you do is you release the tight muscle. This has to do with sort of massaging and warming up the connective tissue that surrounds all the muscles, because you can do a static stretch for the muscle, but if you don't also warm up the connective tissue, then what's going to happen is it's going to want to pull the muscle back into the tight shape that it was in before. So you want to first release the tight muscle, then you can stretch the tight muscle, then you can integrate the newly stretched muscle into simple things like changing the way that you define a vowel shape with your tongue, now that you've got a little bit more room to move with the tongue. And then you apply it to the actual movement that you want to do, whether you want to throw a softball or whether you want to sing Costa Diva. So the first thing I'm going to ask Beverly to do is to release her tongue. This is a small massager, otherwise known as a vibrator, for those of you who complained last time that I was not calling it its proper name. It's the same thing, but we're using it for massage purposes, so we're going to call it a massage. And what I'd like you to do, I'm going to crank this up, and I would like you to press it on the underside of the jaw, which is where the hyoglossus tends to hang out. And yes, I'd like you to very slowly protrude and retract your tongue. And then retract it and just keep it moving. When you're using external massage to release the muscle, it's best to leave the massager in one position and then move the muscle. So that's why I'm asking her to just hold the massager there while she releases her tongue. And, okay, does it feel okay? Okay, one more time. Okay, so step 2, corrective exercise. You've released the muscle, and then you can do a static stretch for the muscles. So here is a gauze pad, and I would like you to. I like you to and this is true if you're stretching your hamstrings as well. You want to really stretch the muscle as much as you can without pulling on it first. So stick your tongue all the way out, and then grasp it, and then just keep sticking it out but pull on it a little bit. And now as you do that, let me hear you go, ah. Let's see what happens. Good. No, I hear ah though. Do you hear an ah?
Yeah, that
This is also not an optimal position for the tongue to be in when you're saying ah. Aren't you glad you came tonight?
Oh my god.
Ah. So this is sending information to her nervous system that it's possible to articulate ah in this ridiculous position. Okay, so that's a static stretch, and you can give that back to me. Same as if you've got a tight hamstring. The next step is to see if you can integrate the newly stretched muscle into actually doing some vocalizing. So if you would be so kind as to place this under your tongue and hold it with position. Now you're going to place it under your tongue and then press the tip of your tongue against the back of your lower front teeth. Yes. Excellent. She can do it. Some of you might have a little bit of trouble doing this, in which case you might need something smaller like a crochet hook or something. What's the first pitch of the aria? Okay. Can you sing?
Right, get
Ah!
up.
Let's see what happens to your tongue.
Oh my god.
Just try. Or do it down the aisle. Ah. She did it. Do it again.
I can
I promise this is not just for my own entertainment. You guys are all so glad that you didn't have to go first. How about up the octave.
Okay.
See what happens. That was really good. Excellent. Excellent. You guys can't see quite as close as I can, but it's the higher it goes, the more we tend to retract the tongue. Almost every singer that I've worked with has some issues with tongue retraction. And there are a number of reasons why we tend to retract the tongue. One is that it sort of it seems to carve out the resonance space that you need for these vowels. And so the higher it goes, if you want more height for your vowel, you might be able to find a little bit more length for your vowel by retracting the tongue and pulling it back and down. But it's not the most efficient way to do it, and it means that what she just did, you guys tried this at home, right? That was an arpeggio starting on a B flat. If you can go up to an F and back down without like the pencil flying across the room, you're in pretty good shape. Okay, so pretty good. And all right, so now one more thing, and then we'll be done with the pencil. Can you? Oh, it wasn't even an F. It's only an E. You can sing this aria without your tongue shaking. Okay, can you sing the first phrase on off with a pencil under your tongue?
Okay.
And see if you can not hold on to it while you do it.
Oh my God.
You can hang on to it.
Okay.
This is hard. Yay!
Okay.
And I have alcohol swabs for this.
Yeah.
Alright, so now just sing the first phrase of the piece again.
Okay.
And just notice what it feels like, and you guys just see how she's doing with her tongue.
Okay.
How's it feel different?
It felt very natural and easy, and and everybody says si parle si con, whatever that is. I can't get my brain to go there, but that's how it felt.
That's a really cool way to put it. Si parle si canta, like the way that you speak is the way that you sing, except that it's not true, because the way that we speak, the way that we define phonemes. The way that we define phonemes in speech usually isn't optimal for singing. And so I think that perhaps your singing vowels will eventually, trickle down and inform the way that you speak these vowels. But you can see, I'm not using my articulators in an optimal way at all as I talk to you about all this. But you went and released your tongue and stretched it, and now it's in a happier position. And I recommend doing this. I actually, before I even vocalize at all, I will use some massagers and some static stretches to really warm up my articulators, to really lengthen the muscles that I know are going to be chronically tight, so that I know that everything in my instrument is available to movement the way that I want it to be before I actually start vocalizing. Because that way I know that if a problem comes up, well, maybe it is that I'm tightening my jaw or retracting my tongue, but I know that I started with it in an optimal position. I wasn't building my phrase around some tightness that was there when I started. So now that your tongue is much happier, I would like to talk about the hidden vowels, right? Because this is a good piece for talking about that. And what I'm thinking about is, so we have words like piante, right? Piante has a J glide, right?
Yes.
Queste has an U glide.
Yes.
And there was one other that I was thinking about.
Maybe sembiante.
Yeah, there's lots of J glides. Sembiante. What's the one I was looking at though?
Noi.
Noi. That's the other one. Noi is a diphthong. So when you have a glide or a diphthong, you still have to define both of the vowels the way that you would define them if you were actually going to sing it. So the first one is queste. Can I have a B flat? Okay, so the main vowel that you're sustaining on in the word queste is A, right? But you've got an oo glide. So let me hear you go. How efficiently can you move between A and oo on that note? So that's, to me, it's a well-defined A and a well-defined oo. Now go in the other direction. Good. Now practice the glide and just go. So start with a good oo and then go to the A. Good. Do it a little bit faster because I'm actually hearing an oo. Good. Can I hear you sing Queste Sacre? So, see where? I heard Kuet.
Okay.
So start, you can make the K with your mouth in an oo position.
Oh,
Go,
yes, okay.
Go. Ooh, coo, 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 Yes, yes. Now, you hear the difference? Okay.
Okay.
Okay, Queste. Very good. Good. She's got to say queste a whole bunch of times. And the first one is the best one. You have to do it every time.
Okay.
We. So it's a movement, right? Everybody do this with me. Go. Ooh. Now with your lips in an oo position, go coo. Queste. Good. So if you practice it that way, then the chances are going to be better that you'll habituate it and you'll have a beautiful oo glide, or otherwise it's a W. And so then let's look at the piante. That's a J glide. This was the bane of my existence for years before I realized that this was because my E vowel wasn't very good. E is one of the vowels that we first have to really redefine as singers, because in speech we tend to go E, but E is better for singing, not the way that we speak it at all. So I managed to fix my E vowel for when I was sustaining on E, but I didn't notice that you had to actually have a good E for these little J glides that we have all the time. So let me hear you go. Can I have the G sharp that's on piante? No, let me hear you go. And Beverly's doing a really good job of just changing from A to E by moving her tongue a little bit forward, as opposed to doing something with her jaw or something with the base of her tongue. So you get that part. Now can you go P, P, P? Because P, right? Look at your consonants.
Yeah.
P is going to make her close her lips together. So then you have to get the jaw back into a nice position for E. We like to go E. So P, P. Try that a couple times. P, P, P. Good. E, pia, pia. I'm hearing more resonant E vowel as part of that now too. Where's a good place to get the piante? Queste sacre antique. So starting on the D there, right before the piante. The D. Yeah.
Oh boy.
Start with the U. Queste.
Okay.
Queste sacre antique piante. Go on. There's the noi. So
Oh, yes.
Noi, right? Noi is closed, is open O.
Open O.
And
Noi.
open, and then E.
No. Oh, gosh. No.
Okay, but then her lips are gonna, so I'm just gonna ask her, like, you need your lips a little bit for the aw, right? But then they get stuck there. No, you have to go. Let me hear you go. Oh. There's me not on aw. Then we just need an end in the middle of it. Good. Can you start right there?
I'm sorry.
But you got a good J glide on the Sembiate.
Okay.
Okay. So this is not
There are
to
a lot
say
of
that.
consonants in there all of a sudden.
Well, we'll talk about those too. But like, you're complaining about consonants. You're singing in Italian. Wait till we get to like the English and the German. And we will. We'll talk about consonants. But I thought that the J glide was really good.
Okay.
And I thought that you got the diphthong on noi really well.
Yeah, that felt good.
So again, this is not to say that you have to micromanage every single movement that your mouth is making. What I'm encouraging you to do though is like notice what the movements are that produce these different sounds that we need in singing, and then habituate them. And probably the vocal exercises that you're doing are going to be the basic 5 Italian vowel sounds, E, A, A, O, U. So hopefully you're habituating those sounds, but then when they come in the context of these glides and diphthongs, you have to just notice them, that your very best E vowel is going to be part of your J glide, that your very best U is going to be what motivates your W. Okay. Beverly, thank you so much for being here. So what language should we have next? Should we have English next?
We can.
Yeah, let's have English next.
Okay.
So tell us a little bit about this ditty you're gonna share with us.
Okay.
What do you think?
Am I in it? Would you like a copy?
Oh no, I'm gonna
Okay.
watch your mouth.
Okay. In theory, you'll get all the words anyway, hopefully. So this is Am I in Your Light, which is from Dr. Atomic. It is in English. I don't know what else you... Oh, and I'm Stephanie.
Just a couple more.
Yeah.
The line you come in.
Yeah, from 7. Thank you. Am I in your light? Am I in
Lots of good stuff we can focus on here. We're going to talk about the ticks at the end, but where I'd like to look is where the slowlies and the I love yous are. Where does all that start stuff? Okay, so we're gonna talk. Let's first talk about the vowels. Slowly.
Mm-hmm.
How many phonemes do we have in slowly? We have s, l, o, u. Oh, we've got a diphthong there. Slowly.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start with the vowels. Now, let's just think about O as opposed to O, the way that we tend to do the English diphthongs. I'm going to talk about again in a moment. But what's a good note to sing slowly on? Let's not do something so high. Let's have that. Can I just have the D? D, yeah. Up the octave.
Slowly, or
Yeah.
Oh, and what?
measure 39.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just if I could just hear that pitch. Sorry. So can you go between like an exaggerated closed O and E on that note?
The D natural.
D.
The second one,
Yeah, yeah. And she's hanging onto her jaw.
Yes.
Can
Should
you
I
do
not
that?
cheat?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's not cheating. It's not cheating. I just want to see what happens. Good. All right. Now you can go O and E without your jaw, and Stephanie just demonstrated that really, really well. You can also make an L without your jaw.
Mm-hmm.
Then if you go oh lo lo on that note, yeah. Do that again. And then E li li. I'm losing a little bit of the brightness of the E vowel. I think partly that her lips are getting a little bit stuck in the O position. So brighter E with resonance. So we've got O, we've got E, we've got L, everything's fine. Then we have S. S makes you close your jaw. Most of the sibilants that we have to articulate in most languages are going to make you close your jaw, which means that if you engage your jaw and close your jaw for the S, you have to get it back into that neutral position that you need for your singing. So let me hear you go oh so on that pitch. Good. Now sing slowly on that note. I'm getting a little bit of a shadow vowel, where it's going slowly, and that's a choice you can make, but for today let's not do that. So
Slowly.
good.
Hang on.
Slowly. Okay, one more time.
Slowly.
Good. So when she sang it the first time, I understood the word, but the resonance that I'm hearing in her vowels right now is better than when you sang it the first time. Because you've taken the time to sort of examine like what is optimal in that part of your range for these vowel sounds, and how can you articulate the consonants in a way that will facilitate that resonance rather than get in the way. So could you just start, just sing from here.
The first slowly.
Yeah, the first slowly. This is
38.
38.
Slowly I bend over you. Slowly your breath runs rhythms through my blood.
I thought the first two slowlies were really good, and the third one wasn't as good.
No, it's so fast.
And again, like, I don't want you to have to think about what your articulators are doing while you sing this, but if you will, like, as you would shed it, just really habituate that every time you say slowly, you go through those movements.
Yeah.
Then it'll be there for you when you actually perform it.
Actually, can I try it one more time?
Yeah, I want you to.
Just when you say fun. Slowly I bend over you. Slowly your breath runs rhythms through my blood.
Slow that trip a little bit.
Okay.
Slowly your. You just hear that.
Yeah.
Slowly your.
I'm sorry, where's
The
the D natural?
practice it. Because I don't want anything to interfere with like the dramatic energy that you're bringing to it. So you just have to make sure that like
It's
all
habituated
of the
correctly.
is habituated. Okay, now I love you. That's something that we say all the time in songs, as well as in real life, I hope. And love, I think, is a tricky word to have to sing because it has like my least favorite vowel in it. In English is kind of our schwa. And the way that we tend to go is with the tongue collapsed. So while I'm not a huge fan of vowel modification generally, this is the one vowel that I will encourage you to modify in the direction of ah. And if you listen to great singers of all styles, you will hear that they generally do modify to ah. If you listen to like Lady Gaga singing, you know, she wants your la, blah, blah. Seriously, don't listen to it. Listen to Bad Romance.
It's
She
true,
sings
yeah.
la, blah, blah, blah. And you probably never thought about it before, but it's just ah is a much better vowel than So let me hear you just go ah la la ah la la. Good. And then we have a V. V is a voiced consonant. We like voiced consonants because you get to keep phonating when you articulate it, but we also don't like V so much because it makes you rest your top teeth against your lower lip, which means you're going to have to close your jaw a little bit. So then you have to get it back open into a neutral position. Let me hear you go ah, va, va, and keep phonating on the V. Ah, va, va. Good. And one of the things that I really liked about what Stephanie just did is that she didn't add extra breath pressure on the V. Sometimes when we have these fricative consonants, whether they're voiced or unvoiced, like an F, that you'd have to disengage your voice, we feel like we've got to like push extra breath through it so that it will be heard, but you don't have to, because your chords are going to keep buzzing if you just keep singing. You're just moving your mouth into that position so we hear the V. So let me hear you go ah, la, va, la, va. Go back and forth. Ah, la, va, la, va. Okay, so that takes care of the love. Then we have the diphthong on I, right? We've been working on diphthongs a lot. because we're so used to saying I, we say that all the time, because we like to talk about ourselves. And so you have to stay with the first vowel and then only make the second vowel on the release, which I thought you did pretty successfully throughout the whole thing. And then we have U, which is a J glide, right? So let me hear you go. I'm gonna hear an I. We need to hear a real E.
Okay, sorry.
I think. Maybe sometimes you want I and not E, especially because the E is going to kind of stick out. But the I thought was a little bit too neutral that time.
Okay.
So find something right in between. And then just listen to it and see what works best, which might be different depending on where you are in your range. So we're going to talk about I again in a moment. And let me hear you go. Ooh, you.
Okay.
Ooh, you. I'm kind of hearing an E now. Ooh, you. Can you be quicker with it? Ooh, you. Ooh, you. That's actually a tricky coordination to get your tongue and your lips to move as quickly as they need to differentiate there. Say, I love you. I love you. Good. The nice thing is that if you practice it once in one song, it's going to be there for you in all of your other arias and songs whenever you have to say this wonderful phrase. So let me hear you sing from As If I Said I Love You. I love you.
The first time.
Yeah.
41.
As if I said I love you, and you should raise your head. I love you, as if I said I love you, as if I said I love you. Really nice. And you should raise your head. Good. Now I understood it when she sang it the first time, but it's going in a really good direction now. Great. I think that you could be making a better connection between the V and the J glide of U.
Okay.
I'm hearing it a little bit ahead of the beat. Consonants kind of have to come right ahead of where the rhythmic value of the note is, because we hear the note starting where the vowel starts, but it should be a little bit closer. From just the I love you on the D flat in bar 46. Bar 46. See if you can have the J glide come a little bit later.
Okay.
I love you.
Yes. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's early. One more
Yeah,
time.
that was good. I love you, as if I said I love you. Yeah, it's a subtle adjustment, but do you guys hear the difference? I thought it sounded much clearer now.
Oh, good.
Yeah, English I think is the hardest language if it's your native language. I was not in the habit of writing IPA into my scores. I'm one of those dorks who has to write the IPA into my scores for all of my arias. I would just not bother in English, and then I realized that I absolutely have to write in all of the IPA phonemes in English, because if I'm looking at these words, because I recognize them and I've been saying these words, my entire life, then I was going to use the movements that I've habituated for language. But if I looked at the phonemes, then I'd probably do my discipline
better.
phonemes. Yeah. Okay, so then there's a lot of tick-tick happening at the end. Yes. Now, you don't need to make an aria out of these things. It's just repeatedly she goes tick-tick on an E, but it needs to have a good vowel. Okay. Can I hear that E at the end there? On the tick-tick at the end? Yeah. Then where you go, with an E.
With it really?
With a real E. Now, I is just sort of a taller version of E. What's the I that you want there? A little bit closer. I'm hearing a little bit yeah. Good.
I can even feel it being
Yeah,
better.
that's a better vowel.
Yeah.
Let me just hear you sing tick, 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 tick. Good. Now, obviously, that kind of production is not going to be right for this moment, but for what you're doing, I don't want you to change anything except the way that you're actually shaping that vowel and investing your breath in it.
Okay.
So can we get into it? Just watch the thing flip through space and see what happens. Watch the thing flip through space. Tick, 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 tick. Yeah, yeah. And I think that to me is like, that's the coup de maître, you know, the master stroke, because the way you sang it the first time through, like no one would complain about it, but now you have the same texture, you have the same sort of interesting diffuse sound, where there's just a couple of vibrancy cycles along with it and the resonance that matches the rest of your voice. And I mean, these are the kinds of details that I think really separate a master singer from, you know, a really, really good singer. I hope that you find it as fun as I do to work on these details. There's lots of vowels and consonants, you know, score. And like, did you hear all the I vowels leading up to it? Watch the thing flip.
Yeah.
We don't vocalize on I, but we have to sing it all the time.
And then
If
the
you're
previous
singing,
verse, you go spin the in one point.
yeah. So just just be really interested in creating these amazing resonating vowels for yourself, all these interesting vowels that we have in English, that we have in German and French that we don't have in Italian, or in the exercises that we usually vocalize on, and just make them resonant and beautiful. So thank you very much.
Claudia, do you want, or do you have a score already, or do you want to look on my iPad for the model?
Sure, I'll follow along. But yeah, German's good, because German and English, there's a lot of similar sounds. So let's have German next.
I know. It's one of my greatest flaws. It's giving me the thinking.
Well, let's just
There we go.
there it is. Okay.
There.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, tell us
Yeah.
who you are and what you're singing. Maybe just give us a quick translation.
Yeah. I'm James, and I'm singing a song by Alma Mahler called Licht in der Nacht, which I've seen as translated as nocturnal light, but literally is light in night, light in the night. And the gist of the text, the gist of the translation is, I'm ringed about by darkness, I'm in the night, and I see far off a flickering, faint little yellow light, which seems to me to be either a still small voice that reassures me in times of despair, or perhaps, and this is where the text gets really freaky, perhaps like the star that hung above the house of Jesus Christ. But then the light goes out, and the night returns to something that is kind of threatening. So, yeah, it's pretty wacky. Yeah. sagen will. Kleines gelbes Licht ist mir wie ein Stern ihren Halt einzig Jesu Christ des Herrn. Und da löscht es aus. Und die Nacht wird schwer. Keine Stimme mehr.
Thank you. Hey, lots of things
Yeah. Yeah.
to talk about.
Mhm.
So I think the first thing that I'd like to touch on, because this is something that comes up a lot in English as well as German. Can you just sing this phrase? That, und das Licht es
Oh yeah.
aus.
Oh yeah.
Just this one here.
Und da löscht, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
Say it, you
So,
said it, or sing it.
sing it.
Yeah.
Do you see where that is, Carol?
I don't know.
So
what time
this
it
is on the second,
Yeah.
end of the second system on the second page. Und das
Yeah.
Licht.
Mhm.
Uh,
Just give me that down.
Second.
Yeah, second system, last bar.
Last bar.
Oh.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Und da löscht es aus.
Now, when you sing aus, I hear
Mm.
ah,
Phew.
right? and I think that's because and sometimes I hear native German speakers do that also, but we don't have that diphthong. We don't go ah o in English very much. We go ah, house, house. Oh thou, that tell us good tidings to Zion, right? The
Right.
elders in the room who sing that.
Mm.
So whenever you have that ah o diphthong in English or in German,
Mm.
it's important to really deliberately train it because we don't say house, we say house.
Yeah.
And so we say ouse.
Ah.
Now, yours was not that obnoxious, but it
Yeah.
still wasn't your beautiful ah that I know that you have.
Right. All right.
So can I have that pitch, the G sharp?
G sharp.
Hold on.
Sharp, yeah. Can I hear you go? Oh.
Oh, did you say
Ah.
oh or ooh?
Ah, oh.
Yeah.
Good. Now, I actually this on the back of your neck while you do this. Because while we're here to talk about our articulation, your neck position is going to affect the shape of your internal resonance as well. So I'm just going to place these on.
Should I turn a certain way for the thing?
I would know, and just like nod yes a couple of times slowly. Good. And check your chin all the way down. Good. And try to find a neutral position. Now come back up and stand. And you can hear that. You probably can't hear it all because these are buzzing right in his ear.
Yeah, feels great though.
Yeah, it does feel good. Okay, so now without it again, but just try to keep your neck nice and long. Go again. Oh, your lips, not your jaw. Now that to me, everything about that is more resonant than where you started.
Feels better.
And so now I'd like to hear that phrase again. Und da löscht es aus with a, not a. So same thing? Yeah.
Und da löscht es aus.
I'm still hearing big odd relief.
Yeah.
So let's look at the rest of these vowels too, because I feel like because this is a more intimate moment in the song. So we're all going to forgive you for being a little bit, maybe blastissimo right now, because I just wanted to figure out where is the resonant place for all these vowel sounds.
Yeah.
So just figure out where's the most comfortable, free place, and not worry so much about the dynamic level that you want. So we're starting with which is the cookie vowel. Cookie. Cookie. That's not a vowel that we vocalize on generally. What is the F sharp? Here you go. Good, and that's more resonant.
Yeah.
Then we have O with umlaut. Can I just hear the vowels for this phrase on that F sharp? So. Something like that. Good.
Trying to get that off a
yeah.
little better.
Yeah, it is better. Do that again. So it's U, A, U, and
thank you.
A, O. So now sing it as written, but maybe at a more energetic, dynamic level, so that you can really invest as much energy in your resonance as you are right now. So with Carol, with Carol.
Und da löscht es aus.
Very nice. Do that again.
Is the eye a little bit?
It's a lot better.
Some of that.
And also the resonance is lining up now. Do it again.
Und da löscht es aus.
Good. Now the diphthong has to be fast. Don't
Yes.
warp it. Aus. It's right before the consonant.
That's Hanley. You want me to do that? Und da löscht es aus.
Just going back towards the again.
And I think it's because I'm not committing. I'm trying to soft pedal it.
I don't
To
think you're
do it.
soft pedaling it. I just think you love the text so much.
Yeah.
That you want to say the sentence. And I want you to also, but I want you to do it with beautiful vowels.
Yeah. Und da löscht es aus.
Very nice.
Feels better.
Okay, there's a lot of
Feels better.
detail.
I'll
there.
take your word for it.
Yeah.
Feels better.
Okay, so now, would you please sing these climactic phrases? I'm so sorry to ask you to start here. So this is, speak this for us. Bist mir wie ein Stern. Just speak these two phrases for me.
Right. Bist mir wie ein Stern, überm Hause einst Jesu Christ Kern.
So is it Christ or is it Christ
Christ in German.
in German?
It's not so much fun to say, but you know.
Okay, so I or E. Okay, and now sing that for me. Lots of I here, right?
Right.
We just were working on the
Yeah.
Christ.
Bis mir wie ein Strahlen überm Hause eins Jesu Christ des Herrn.
All right, so
Yeah.
here we have an E vowel on an F sharp and then an I vowel on a G.
Yeah,
So,
super fun.
and a lot of people are like, well, just sing ah up there. And you'll hear a lot of like great opera singers and they'll just like modify everything to ah
Yeah.
because that's where they know how to resonate things. I'm a big fan of beautifully articulated vowels no matter where you are in your range. And it's true that sometimes little adjustments have to happen. But what has to happen so that we actually really hear the vowel on high notes is with the kind of clarity and ease that it would be if it were closer to your speaking range, is that you just have to find the resonating shape that's going to accommodate that vowel sound. So in addition, we were talking at the beginning of the class to the way we perceive vowels has to do with where the hump of the tongue is in your mouth and also the shape of your aperture. But then as things go higher, the optimal shape to resonate each of these pitches is probably going to mean that in addition to what you're doing with your tongue and the shape of the aperture, that you need to arrange your internal space so that your larynx is settled, right? So you've got a nice long supraglottal tract so that we have all of your resonance there. And then we have to find a way to have the height that you require, the internal height that you require for those pitches with the tongue, lip, jaw movement that's going to make us perceive the vowel sound. So, can I hear that F sharp that he has to sing? That was the Stern, the top of the page. So,
Yeah.
I know that you can give me a beautiful O vowel and falsetto on that note. Let me hear you go. Ooh. Good. Now, find the E vowel that's going to have the height of the O. Can you go? Good. That's flattening out a little bit. Yes. All right. Now, yes, it's in falsetto. It's not your full vocal production, but you just identified a really good vowel shape for that E. Do it again. Now, release your breath and sustain there. Now that was better, but you skipped a step. I'd like you to do it in falsetto.
Oh, sorry.
Because what we want to do is habituate the vowel shape. I should have asked, that was my fault. Habituate the vowel shape in a way that you know that you can actually do. So go, again, find the vowel. That's going,
Yeah.
Good. Now, mind you, I'm not talking about placement. I'm not talking about like finding a vowel shape that you can then like solidify and tighten around and like stick a pin in. It's like my E is always there on F sharp. But it just sort of feel like where does your throat really be happy about going E there? So again, go slowly because it's still it's spreading a little bit. Here's the height. Still falsetto. So now can you full voice, but really just let your breath release through that shape that you found. It's not quite the same.
No, it's
Okay,
not.
so can I put my hands on you?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so relax your jaw. I'm feeling for the base of his tongue here.
Yeah.
Now, tuck your chin down and go again. His tongue is in a really good place. Go.
Ooh, that's fun. Yeah, just let him go.
Okay, so-
Fine.
Yeah, Because when he did it in falsetto, his tongue was relaxed, and then when you went to do it in full voice, just like right against it. And you also sort of want to.
Yeah, do the thing.
Okay, so we're gonna.
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask you to hold these in the back of your neck. Okay, this is just encourage the length that he really needs in his neck, and I've got you in the front.
Okay.
Now go again. Falsetto. Good. Now keep your abs really relaxed and just trust and see what happens if you go full voice.
It's a
Yes.
struggle to keep
Did you
them
hear it change?
engaged.
Yeah.
He's working like crazy. It's
I'm
like
literally working so hard to not
but it let
clench.
go.
Yeah.
And when
here.
and even and there.
Yeah.
And when he first started, even though he's got the massagers on the back of his neck, you really want to pull your head back. Let's do this one more time.
Okay.
Falsetto. Beautiful. Sustain. Don't skip steps. Don't skip
sorry.
steps. Falsetto. Good. Okay, now get a good breath and just let it go. Keep your abs relaxed. Keep your neck relaxed. See what happens. Much better.
Who just wants to
It's
get
much
involved?
better. So you can hear how it's possible for him to go farther in that direction.
Goodness. Oh yeah. Lord.
So now,
Mm.
can you sing the phrase on the vowels?
Mm.
E, I. So this is starting on the C sharp.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now you're not going to have the airflow that you need on the F sharp if you start
Right.
like without it. So
Yeah.
really release on that onset there.
Oh, he
That
just
was
wants
a lot
to. He
better.
just wants to
Yeah.
go like that. Oh my
Yeah.
god. Alright.
Okay.
Yeah, mental gymnastics.
Yeah.
Do you want me to do it again?
No, let's just talk about it for a moment. Give yourself a rest.
Mm-hmm.
So this is we saw how like isolating that E vowel on that F sharp. You started getting it to sort of like free up when you were just right on it.
Yeah.
But then adding the coordination of starting from more than an octave below and on the ascent there. One of the things that's going to have to evolve
Yeah.
is just like the shape of the internal resonating space.
Mm.
So yes, we're talking about articulation, we're talking about the jaw, lips, tongue, soft palate, but also the length of the supraglottal tract, especially as pitches go higher. If the larynx starts to ascend a little bit, which is one of the reasons that I was putting the massages in the back of his neck to discourage that, then that's also going to change the internal vowel shape. Can I just sing this very legato on ah and then go to e when you get to the top? So where's the F sharp? So ah.
The C
That's
sharp?
the C sharp. Sorry. So ah. I portamento between the pitches, especially on the way up to this
Sure.
note,
Yeah.
so that you can encourage that to stay subtle. And I'm actually going to put these in the back.
Okay.
Again.
Okay.
That's much better.
Struggle bus.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you can hear how there's still room for it to continue to get freer. But this is one of the reasons why it's so important to just be very specific with your articulation. Because often what I think will happen is a singer will try to sing one of these incredibly epic, challenging, ascending phrases to a sustained high note, and then you meet resistance, right? And you think, no, it's because I just need more breath. I need more support. When in fact what you need is to be able to articulate those vowel sounds so that you're not actually creating resistance for your voice and for your breath. It's going to keep you from being able to access the vowel shape that you need at the top. So my recommendation is that if you've got a phrase like this and you're finding that like I can't get up to the high note without it feeling tight or driven, yes, pay attention to your breath. You do need to pay attention to your breath there. But find out if you're actually creating resistance on the way up with your articulators or by allowing the larynx to ascend bit
Yes.
in a way that you can then release it, because
Yeah.
in general, if you're experiencing resistance, the most expedient thing to do is to just like shove it out of the way, you know, in real life as well as in singing. But the way to resolve it is to just ameliorate the resistance, release, relax the resistance, and then you won't have anything to push out of your way, it'll just go.
Cool. Thank you.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Nathan, I have to save you for last.
Oh, okay.
So
I was
we're
just
gonna
like,
French,
I
have
know.
French next.
Cool.
Nobody's singing with a tight jaw. We're gonna talk about jaw stuff.
I've kind of
Yeah.
Tell us who you are and what you're gonna sing.
I'm Anna, and I'm going to sing Que fais-tu Blanche tu Torella from Romeo et Julieta by Gounod. Depuis hier, je cherche en vain mon maître. Est-il encore chez vous, mes seigneurs capillaires? Vos opus, si vos
And well, just I can put it in front of you if needed. You are tall. It's a great advantage for roles like this. And she wrote all of her IP into the score. Very impressed. So how was that for you, since I haven't heard you do this full out before? And
It was good. Yeah, I felt pretty good about it. Some of the high notes maybe didn't feel as free as they could be. I tried to keep my mouth open more because I know you told me to, but I think I forgot sometimes.
well, open more than what? Let's talk about the whole jaw thing, because we haven't really had a chance to do this. I didn't notice any issues with your jaw.
Okay.
But let's just talk about jaw position here. There's no one right place for your jaw to be. Our bodies are all so different from each other, and the way that our musculature evolves is going to be very, very unique. But in general, when we're talking about articulators, you want to just do things as efficiently and as minimally as possible. And we don't need to use the jaw nearly as much as we think we do for articulation or for resonance. So let's just take an opportunity to just kind of like check in with your jaw and see what it does. And what I'm going to talk to you about this first, and then I'm going to ask you to do it. When you first start opening your jaw, the mandible, right, the lower jaw, which is not directly attached to the rest of your skull, rotates in the temporomandibular joint, and then as you continue to open your jaw, it slides forward and down from that joint. So that first movement where it's just rotating and opening is called rotation, and then as it starts to slide forward and move down a little bit more, that's called translation. And if you press your hands against your cheeks, and you just start with your jaw in a closed position, and you start opening your jaw, you're probably going to detect that moment when it starts moving out of this rotation movement into translation and starts to shift forward. So everybody just start with your jaw closed and try that. You feel where the movement changes? So just as a general rule of thumb, my recommendation is that you allow your jaw to just kind of like hang out there in rotation and not open it more than that. Sometimes you will find that it will be advantageous for you, depending on your anatomy and depending on what you want to do, to open a little bit farther. But if you open a little bit farther, then it moves into a position where it risks encroaching on all the stuff in your neck that you need for like laryngeal movement and phonation and that sort of thing. And it just really isn't necessary, because when we instinctively open the jaw really wide for things like that, what tends to happen is that instead of finding the internal space and height and flexibility for our vowel sounds, especially on high notes, we try to find the space down and out, which is why the instinctive way to get high notes to come out is to just go, ah! Right? You open your jaw super wide, you spread your lips, and you go, ah! And I can sort of wedge my larynx into a position where I can make that note happen, but it's not going to be very resonant. But I didn't, the only place actually where I thought that you were doing something more with your jaw than you needed to was, you've got to do this scale up to a C on E, which is not my favorite vowel, I'll confess. And I think that you can find, and then the vowel wasn't quite as clear on the top. So let's just start right there, since we've been talking about high notes. Can I have a C? Any C will do. So let me hear you just go. Just a scale up and down C to C. Good. Now that was pretty good. Hang on to your jaw and just see if you can let it stay relaxed. And can you just go? I can't do it because I'm not warmed up. Now what if you don't open your jaw like that? Okay. Yeah. Now go a little bit slower and see if you can find a little bit more internal height rather than having to look for the space down in front. So it's pretty good. It's not as resonant as it might be. But on a scale, it's probably going to be a little bit easier too. So now sing the scale again. That was really good.
Thanks.
So does that feel a little bit better, different from what you were doing?
I felt like the air was moving more through the top
Yeah.
of it.
And after just saying that, like, I'm not recommending a lot of vowel modification. If you think a brighter thing, if you move it a little bit towards A, I think you're gonna hear it differently and feel a little bit more space on the inside too, paradoxically.
Okay.
So try that in, because the tongue wants to sort of like go back and out of the way. So if you think a little bit more A rather than we'll still hear but your tongue won't go back quite as far.
Okay.
Very scientific. see if that works for you. Yeah, that I think is a good vowel shape for you on for this crazy kind that you have to sing.
Okay.
How was that?
Yeah, it felt good. I didn't feel like the notes of the scale were as well defined as before, but I can work on that.
Yeah, but
It was just the high note.
yeah, that was last class was the coloration class. No, we're just talking about vowel definition. Good. Okay, so this is brand new for you, and when learning new repertoire, I think that sort of choreographing your movement vowel to vowel and then adding the consonants in is something that if you really do a lot of woodshedding with this when you first start learning your piece, then it'll just always be there for you and you won't have to fix it later. And the main thing, and you probably know I was going to talk about this, is in French, many vowels require your lips. We tend to underutilize our lips generally, whatever language we're speaking and singing in. And in French, it becomes that much more important that you deliberately like work that sort of lip movement into it, because you can pronounce all of these sounds without necessarily really engaging your lips. But if you don't use your lips for a lip vowel, you're going to have to do it some other way. Usually what that will be the base of your tongue, and then that will just sort of like tighten things up over the course of the piece, and then all of a sudden you go to sing like your high C at the end and it isn't where you wanted it to be. One of the rules for articulation rules, guidelines, is if you have an option to use one body part or another body part to get the job done, use the body part that is farther away from your larynx, right? So if you can use your base of your tongue to articulate a lip vowel, a so-called lip vowel, use your lips instead, because the base of the tongue is attached to the hyoid bone, as we said, which is then going to it's going to interact with your larynx in a way you don't want to, whereas the lips are not directly attached to pretty much anything else. And the place where we most need to pay attention to this in French is usually the schwa, the neutral vowel at the end. Because the idea, we talked about this last time we were working on something in French, the idea that you actually have to do something deliberate for a neutral vowel is very counterintuitive. But let's just look a little bit at the schwas at the beginning, where the actual aria starts. Can you speak the first few phrases for us under tempo? So, que fais-tu? And just speak it with your most beautiful French.
Que fais-tu, blanche tourterelle, dans ce nid de vautour?
Good. Now the way that you used your lips on that final ooh, I would like you to engage a little more like that. So let me hear you just go, ah, ooh, ah, ooh, ah.
Ah, ah, ah.
Good. Now watch my mouth as I do this. Que fais-tu, blanche tourterelle? Can you say blanche tourterelle? There's only one vowel in that line that would not benefit from engaging your lips.
Blanche tourterelle.
Elle. Tourterelle.
Tourterelle.
Did I do that right? Is it schwa for yeah. Okay, so, and that's a lot more than you were using your lips before. Do it again. Que fais-tu, blanche tourterelle?
Que fais-tu, blanche
dark on nasally
tourterelle?
Good. Just sing those two phrases for us.
Que fais-tu, blanche tourterelle?
No, that was much better.
Blanche.
The schwas are the ones that you really have to be disciplined about, because you're going to just want to relax because it's a neutral vowel. But to be a beautiful schwa, we still need lips there.
Blanche tourterelle.
Do that again, first two phrases.
Que
every vowel and he slips just 50% or more of them. Do, su, ni, du, vo, tur. You need to just kind of relax for the E vowel there. Say that for me. Do, su, ni.
Dans ce nid de vautour.
Get the schwa.
Nid de.
Yes. Do that again. Do.
Dans ce nid
Then
de.
relax on the E.
Dans ce nid de vautour.
Good. So now just try connecting the vowels. O, U, I, U, O.
En, I, O.
Right. I had the privilege of taking singing in French with Tom Grubb. Have any of you worked with Tom? Mr. Grubb, I should say. I did my master's at Peabody Conservatory, and he would come down one day a week. So we only had him on Fridays, and they gave him this windowless room, and we would sit in there for 3 hours for the class without a break. And the entire first semester, all we did were vowels. Just vowels for the entire semester. Because it really is useful to spend that much time just concentrating on getting the vowel shapes right. And then second semester we got to do consonants. And he's still here in New York City, and he's still coaching. If you have the opportunity, if you have the time, I'm happy to put you in touch. He's a treasure, and he's terrifying, and I love him. But he would have had you spend an entire semester going, oh, I'm not kidding. You know, right? Yeah, that's what you, okay, so do that again. I need to have you like stick your thumb in your mouth. So go, oh, so you don't close your jaw either. Oh, if you can.
Oh,
Good, okay, sing that phrase. Dans ce nid.
Dans ce nid de vautour, quelque jour déployant ton aile, tes siffles les amours.
Right, so the same kind of detail that you want with your vowels in English and Italian and everything else. In French, we have this U glide, right? The phonetic Y glide. Suis, right? And we have these combination vowels. So your phonetic Y, which we also have in German, which of all the other things we didn't get to in the German this time, but can I hear you go, can I have that D that she sings Suivre on? The D? Yeah. Let me hear you go. Because phonetic Y is pretty much just E with lips. You have to keep singing E though. So, sweet. Yeah, so we don't end up with a W glide, which is what we hear a lot in French. We hear suis instead of suis. French is a wonderful language to sing in because of all of these nuances and shadings of vowels, and because the language is so legato. So as you continue to work this into your repertoire, I encourage you to just like go really slowly and be very interested in like what each of these vowels are. In French and in German, we often have a combination vowel that's going to be some movement of your tongue combined with some movement of your lips, depending on how closed or open the vowel is. You know, these schwas, is really just air with lips. Let me hear you go. Yeah, so depending on how open or closed you want that combination vowel, OE, schwa, O slash, it's going to just be these little fine adjustments of where you want the hump of the tongue, where you want your lips. And you can create all of these beautiful shadings and timbres and colors with the vowels, which I think makes French a very rewarding language to sing in. But if you don't take the step to do that, then the vowels tend to homogenize a little bit, and then you end up like pronouncing the lip vowels with the base of your tongue instead, and you're an impeccable musician. You're gonna like get the articulation and there's no way that you're gonna sing this in a way that it's not gonna be perfectly intelligible. But if you can do it in a way that's just going to keep everything really, really super free as you keep working on it. And for the most part, you need to engage your lips a lot more than you think. All of us do. All of you do. Do your lip exercises. Okay, thank you for sharing this. Okay. Oh, yes.
Oh, great. All right,
Yes.
let's do it.
You're on. Okay, I
All
asked
right.
Nathan to bring a couple of musical theater pieces. You want to tell us
They're
about
on
what
board.
your, yeah, we should
Sure.
start with a legit one and then.
Yeah, that'll probably be easier.
Yeah.
All right. My name is Nathan. I'm going to sing "Hey There" from the Pajama Game, which is very like legit, strapping young Midwestern fella. And then I'm going to sing "Old Red Hills of Home," strapping young Southern fella, more contemporary. Anyway, we're gonna start with "Hey There."
Okay, and it'll become clear why I thought it would be fun for us to look at these two pieces.
Hey there, you with the stars in your eyes. Love never made a fool of you. You used to be too wise. Hey there, you on that high flying cloud. Though she won't throw a crumb to you, you think someday she'll come to you. Better forget her with her nose in the air. She has you dancing on a string. Break it and she won't care. If you take this advice I hand you like a brother, or are you not seeing things too clear? Are you just too far gone to hear? Is it all going in one ear and out the other?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I'll just start a better forget her.
Better forget her with her nose in the air, a puppet on a string. She won't care for me. Take this advice I hand you like a brother. Or are you not seeing things too clear? Are you just too far gone to hear? Is it all going in one ear and out the
Let's just segue right into the other
Sure.
one. We'll talk
Okay.
about this.
Farewell, my life. I'll write every evening. I've carved our names in the trunk
Blood of the
Yeah.
North. It's 61,
Okay,
second,
might be
63rd.
correct.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll just write on the D.
Oh.
Yeah.
Let all the blood of the North spill upon them till they paid for what they wrought, taking back the lies they've taught, and there's peace in Marietta, and we're safe again in Georgia. In the land where honor lives and breathes, the old red hills of home. Farewell, my Lila.
Thank you.
Thanks, yeah, for our purposes.
Cool.
So first let me just ask,
Mhm.
ask how that was for you.
Felt pretty good. I mean,
And how was it different singing the one piece and then the other?
it's it like just technically, it could be a little difficult to go from like something that's so like John friggin' right to like contemporary young boy kind of. You know, it's like, oh, now I have to sound like a 9-year-old to make up for like what I've just done. So, in terms of the legit placement, yeah.
And this is one of the things that I find so interesting. I was really curious to have Nathan perform these two pieces for us. I love working with musical theater singers. I don't get to do it nearly as much as I would like to because my skill set has more to do with just like freeing up vocal production and giving you the tools that you need to be able to make the sounds that you want to make and be able to say what it is that you want to say. Musical theater performers sometimes don't spend as much time working with vocal technical specialists or studying technique as classical singers have the opportunity to. And I think it's partly because we're so concerned, classical singers are so concerned with just being able to produce an even balanced sound throughout our range in a way that's going to be able to acoustically project over an orchestra. Whereas musical theater performers, pop performers these days have more options than we do in terms of timbre because you have some assistance from the microphone. So there are all kinds of interesting ways that you can sort of shape your resonance to get different characters in your voice. That you, since you don't have to be so concerned about producing your own resonance and acoustically projecting your voice, you've got a much bigger playground in terms of the sounds that you can make. Often what will happen is I will end up working with musical theater performer because there's something that technically they can't do. They can't hit the note, right? They can't navigate the flexibility of a wide-ranging phrase or so, and so they'll come to me because they want some technical help. And so I'll use my tools to help them get it going, and then one of the first things that they'll tell me is like, yeah, but now it sounds boring. Because they don't want the resonance to be all the same all the time. So then my job is to figure out how can I help you make the sound you want to make in a way that's going to be really healthy for your instrument. And so that's kind of what I'd like to do right now. I would like you to bring the legit back and take a look at, can we just...
Everything's a mess.
Yeah. Much less of a mess.
This is just 2
Let's let
pages,
it
so
over
this should be
to
okay.
So
Okay.
just over it
Oh,
goes.
great.
Okay, so now I want you to like go back to the legit thing and just sing up to trunk of this tree with your legit voice.
Oh, okay, sure. From Farewell.
Yeah.
Okay.
Farewell, my Lala, I'll write every evening. I've carved our names in the trunk of this tree.
Okay, so now let's talk about that. Was that boring now? Like,
No, not at all. It actually felt more southern.
Yeah.
Yeah, it had more of a drawl to it, but I like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I'm not sure what adjustments Nathan made between the first and the second piece, but I felt like the result was that it kind of cut your volume in half and it made it more effortful. We don't
Yeah.
and that's not a sacrifice that you need to make for the sake of character.
Yeah.
So what I want to do is just like keep going in the direction of trying to like find the voice for this character that's still your voice, that still is healthy and comfortable.
Well, if I may say, part of the
Sure.
transition is it's like this used to be my voice. Hey there is now my voice, and now I've got to be like, what was I? Oh yeah, like
It's
you
his
know,
own rep.
20 years ago. Yeah, this is I'm way too old for this shit now. I mean, I'm just doing it because it illustrates a point, but
Yeah.
I can't sing this anymore. Not for an audition. Yeah.
Because you sing auditions all the time.
I know, right?
Okay, so that's actually interesting information for me. Now, one of the things that I do want to compliment you on, one of the things that Nathan and I have worked on a lot is finding a balanced E vowel, right? And your E vowels in both pieces I thought were really, really good.
Great, thank you.
And another one of the reasons that I asked him to participate tonight is that Nathan will sometimes drop a soft palate without realizing that he's doing so, and I didn't feel like you were doing that either, but now I want to kind of encourage you to.
Okay.
Can I hear you just go, can I have the first note of the song, the song? No. Can I hear you just go, with your opera singer voice, just the vowels for the first phrase. Good, and without the diphthongs.
Oh, okay.
Now what if I asked you to do the exact same thing with your soft palate dropped?
Was it dropped?
I don't
See, I
think
can't
so.
tell. Okay, let me try one more time.
Okay, do it for me on
Okay.
NGM. Good. Humming consonants are going to make you drop your soft palate, right? N, G, M will make you drop your soft palate. The soft palate does one thing pretty much for us as singers. It regulates nasality by closing the nasal port, right? So if I go, that's me singing with my soft palate up, closing off my nasal port so that I'm not getting all that nasal resonance. So with my soft palate up.
Okay.
You do that now. With it up.
You really want me to like to snarl it out?
Well, what happens if you just drop your soft palate? Don't try to make it snarly, just drop your soft palate. Yeah.
Is that it? Okay.
Now with it dropped.
Oh, that was dropped. Sorry. Oh, let me
He's
go.
gotten too good at this now. And now with it dropped. Okay, so now go. Good. So that's a very free, well-produced sound, but it's got a little bit of the twang.
Yeah.
So just see what happens if you sing some of this with your soft palate dropped,
Okay.
but everything else
Sure.
legit.
Okay. Sounds
Okay.
good. Yep. Sounds good. Let's do one more measure. Farewell, my Lala. I'll write every evening. I've carved our names in the trunk of this tree.
So I'm hearing more of the character. And now if you were to listen to that and be like, oh no, that's still boring, then you can snarl it out. If you really want to bring a little bit more of that sort of twangy edge to it. But the first thing that you want to do, if you're looking for a little bit more of a character voice, like Nathan said he wanted for this song, is just play with the soft palate and see what it sounds like. If you do everything else sort of legit, but then drop it. I have some colleagues who specialize in working with musical theater singers who feel that for the kind of sound that you'd want for this, you also should allow your larynx to elevate a little bit. It's my preference not to do that because I think that it's not necessary for everybody, but that is one way to approach it. But,
and when I originally did
Yeah.
do this, I was definitely trained that it's like you do want some
yeah.
lift there. Yeah.
But if you can find a way to create like the resonance and the color without having your larynx going up and down, then I think that that's probably better, especially if you're a crossover artist. So that you're not making that, you're gonna have to adjust some things with your technique to get the kind of color that you want when you're singing musical theater. You're gonna have to adjust some other things if you're going to be singing with a microphone. But if you can like let the larynx just stay settled and get the effect some other way, then that to me is preferable. I just want to do one more thing, because like this, the climactic high note at the end of Hey There was spectacular, and it's not, is it the same note?
Which,
Is the high note that
it's
you
a
have
G
in-
flat, and then I think the highest note in Old Red Hills of Home is a G.
I thought it was an F.
Oh, it's the big
Is
one.
it-
Yeah,
is it-
that's an F.
Where's the big F in this one?
Big F's right at the end. Right before the last farewell.
Got me
Yeah, there we go.
upset.
Got it.
Okay, so
63.
it's only a half step difference, and I actually thought that the G flat was easier for you than the F.
Yeah.
It's the same.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's hear the big finish. Is it all going in one ear and out the other? And
Sure.
what's the vowel for your last syllable?
As opposed to
Say other.
other.
What's the last vowel? Other.
Other.
It's kind of OE, right?
OE. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. I was Other.
Right.
Other.
So engage your lips a little bit on the vowel.
Okay. Other.
Other.
Okay.
Okay, is it all going in one
Sure.
ear?
Is it all going in one ear and out the other?
And my neck didn't feel like it was gonna explode.
Everybody got excited when you
Yeah.
sang that. Now, we want that.
Okay.
So if you need to, like, in the land where honor, it's the G. So
Oh,
sing
yeah.
from In the Land Where Honor
Sure.
Lives and Breathes.
Okay.
This is bottom of 62, Carol.
I'll just pick it up within the land and then
In the land where
for
honor
third
lives and breathes.
system. Second part.
Wait,
Um,
what page are we on?
62.
52?
62.
60.
In the other song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the land where honor lives and breathes.
I didn't really do it.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. I was like,
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
not the same instrument that you're
Yeah.
playing
Well, it's
here.
also it's the lips weren't there. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So sing it legit.
In the land,
Sure.
in the land where honor lives and breathes, the old red hills of home. Farewell.
Now, so how can you get some twang into that? I thought that was much easier.
Yeah.
Um,
Not that one.
so what can you do? Well, land is as a nice twangy vowel.
Yeah.
In the land.
Oh, okay,
So
yeah.
it's just doing a twangier there.
Sure.
In the land where honor, and you know what's going to make. I've worked with especially tenors who've been like trained to drop their soft palate on high notes because it actually, depending on how everything else is organized, it may create a little bit more range of motion for your larynx to shift into a position where you can sing the high note, but then you just lose so much resonance. But since it does make things easier, see what happens if you just let it say, sit down.
Sure.
Can I hear you go? Yeah.
Okay.
Let your larynx say a little bit subtle though. Yeah, you have to go back up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Difficult.
Yeah, because you train yourself not to do it now.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the land. A little bit more like that.
Sure.
In the land where honor lives and breathes, the old red hills of home. Farewell, my Lila.
but it sounded so much easier.
It did. It
than
was
the way you
much
did it
easier.
the first
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Yeah.
When we're talking about articulators, I mean, I'm also guilty of like not talking that much about the soft palate because the soft palate can be very difficult to work with. For some people can sort of sense where it is, other people can't. When you tell somebody to do stuff with their soft palate, since we don't have a lot of like sensory nerve endings there, you might end up getting them to just like tighten something up that's in the area of the soft palate that has nothing to do with it. But when you're talking about a quality of repertoire, a kind of repertoire that being able to vary the degree of nasality that you bring to it, or the kind of repertoire that it's not going to matter so much if your larynx kind of creeps up a little bit on you for the sake of ease there, then it can be useful to talk about. So you guys heard the difference in timbre when he was singing like the high note full on in Hey There versus what he just did in this. So that is, you did a really good job of demonstrating different ways to approach this repertoire depending on the sound that you want and what your soft palate is bringing to it. So
nothing if not a mimic. So.
But you did it. You did it fantastic. So
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you once again for being here with me this evening. Thank you, Carol Long, for your
Thank you,
support.
Carol.
And thank you, of course, Carnegie Hall, for letting us use this beautiful space. And check in. We'll be doing another studio class at some point, probably the third week of July. And I'll let you all know what it's going to be about and when to expect it. And please be in touch if you'd like to participate. Cool. Thanks.
Thanks.